Hello, and welcome to the Inspired Living podcast with Ellen Broderick. Each week, we delve into a conversation with an individual who has and is pursuing their passion. My guest this week is Ed LaPlante. Ed is the chief or operating officer for One Earth Body Care. Ed holds a BS in Decision Sciences and Qualitative Business Analysis from Indiana University. He has been the president of numerous businesses, including Chimney Master, BDR Masonry, eSoft Engineering. As well, Ed has been a senior executive, a speaker, a trainer, a consultant for multi-billion-dollar company Dow Agro Science. Ed is an environmental enthusiast, a hiker, a rock climber, a mushroom cultivator, an avid reader, and a musician. Welcome, Ed. Really nice to have you with me today.
Wow, thank you, Ellen. It's an honor and a pleasure.
So Ed's wife, Ann Alter, was on the podcast last week, and I'm just going to start with that because I have known both of you now for a year, and in the course of that time have been just so impressed with the kind of way each of you pursues your interests and the way that you support one another in doing this as well. So starting with that, I wanted to focus first on your music and really hear from you something about where in your childhood do you remember realizing that music was really important to you, and in what way was it important?
Well, one of my first memories is of my great-grandmother, and she was able to play quite a few songs on the piano and sing. And I was pretty young when she passed away, but I remember her playing and singing, and just that memory has stuck with me. And you know, when I was young, I think it was sixth grade when I joined the school band, and I started playing trumpet. And I wound up playing, you know, all through grade school and high school in the school bands. And I even played through, you know, as a freshman in college at the Indiana University marching band. I played with that group. And one of the things, though, was that the trumpet really, I don't know what it was, but I always wanted to quit. And so shout out to my mom. I always wanted to quit band because it just didn't resonate with me. And I never found inspiration with the music that we were playing. And it didn't really happen until I was in my late 20s, when I had put my trumpet down and hadn't really played any music in almost 10 years. And my father-in-law gave me an old guitar that he had at his house. And I didn't know anything about the guitar. I let it sit in the corner of my apartment for, you know, almost a year before a friend of mine came over, and he knew how to play a few things. And that was it. I thought, well, maybe I can learn to play a few things on the guitar. And so that's how I, you know, sort of got reconnected with it. Because then with the guitar, I was able to play music that I liked, that I enjoyed listening to. And so, you know, that created a different kind of connection for me.
So what was some of the music that you enjoyed listening to and that you started to play yourself?
Yeah, so when I was young, I'd always, listen to, like, Van Halen and Eric Clapton and bands like that. And but when I started playing guitar, I really started to focus on just the more simple forms of music, and the blues really started to come to the fore for me. For one, it was more accessible because they tend to be just three chords,
Mm-hmm.
and but the just the feeling and the raw integrity of the music and the lyrics, it just even though it was so simple, it was just very elemental and very very powerful and emotional. And so that's how I started, just playing three chord songs and learning a couple guitar, chords on the guitar.
Did you play with other people, or did you mostly pursue music solo?
Yeah, so I never really played in any bands. I took lessons. I took lessons for a while. And so that was, playing with somebody else was playing with a teacher. And I enjoyed, getting together with other guitar playing friends from time to time, but it never was it never was a regular thing for me. But when I guess when my children, right about the time that our first child was born, I started to take lessons from a guy who, his name is David Morgan, and he was a blues player, and that's pretty much what he focused on. And I took lessons from him for several years and learned the finger style sort of, and we did a deep dive into the Mississippi Delta style, and we were doing Robert Johnson and Blind Lemon Jefferson and Blind Willie Johnson and Son House, and some of those just great primordial thinkers and writers and entertainers.
Mm-hmm. So there's something about the blues that really reached in and touched your soul, it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially because it was some of the songs that were the most accessible to me, but also the most inspiring. And some of the old lyrics in those old blues songs are pretty rough, and that was kind of eye-opening and difficult to get over to some degree. But
Can you say a little about that, Ed?
Oh, they're just full of violence and misogyny in so many of those old Robert Johnson tunes, especially. But enough about that. It was very it was very exciting for me to be able to play some of those songs that I was hearing on the records, and and embellish and change them a little bit, and so when my kids were little, I started to go, once I got a few of those songs together, I started to go out and play at open mics or little festivals here and there. And I had a lot of fun with that. I have a great memory of playing at this little community festival and my daughter Emma was just barely walking age, and there was one song where she walked over and sat up on my knee while I played one of those songs, and it was really a lot of fun.
So let's stick with this theme of your children, because I remember asking you at one point about your children and their musical interests. So can you say a little something about that, and how the connection between you and your children and the part that music has played in that?
Yeah, great question. So we've got 3 children, and they all began playing the piano when they were about 5 or 6, and we took steps to make sure that the kids were listening to music even before that. But they all took to it with different levels of enthusiasm. And our middle daughter Chloe, she played piano for several years, and then she switched to violin, and then she switched to clarinet, and eventually became a great singer, and put a lot of energy in high school and college into singing, and has really enjoyed that. Our younger son, Chase, he's still very involved in an a cappella group at Indiana University called Another Round, and they are, they're doing a lot of amazing things with their music. Our oldest daughter had, she played the cello at a pretty high level in high school, and is still musically oriented. But one of the things that, one of the fun things we did when they were little was we started a children's, excuse me, we started a ukulele club in the neighborhood. And so our 3 kids, and I think there were 4 or 5 other neighbor kids in the, that lived on the cul-de-sac where we were in Carmel, Indiana. And we would, we'd meet in the living room and learn chords and play some songs together. And they, that was a really fun time when we did that. All the kids had their ukuleles out, and they were strumming.
A ukulele is a 4-stringed instrument usually, right? Or maybe
right.
So the reason for the choice of instrument, did that have to do with accessibility and also ease at learning chords, or why choose the ukulele when you were working with young kids?
Yeah, so one is affordability. It's pretty cheap to pick one of these up, but also they're small, and there's just 4 strings, and we got 4 fingers, so that tends to to make it a little easier than than working on a guitar. So you can sort of get right to the basics of it without being distracted by some of the other levels of sophisticated harmonies. There's not as much range, of course, but you get the idea, the basic idea, to be able to work with the music.
And that seems to be an instrument, the ukulele seems to be an instrument that continues to speak to you, or that you continue to speak through, maybe is a better way to say it. Can you speak about what keeps you? I think you still play the guitar as well, but ukulele seems also to be something that, may have you may have been attracted to it for certain reasons. What keeps you attracted to it?
Good question. So a couple years ago, I started to develop some discomfort in my neck and shoulder area, and I don't really know what it's from, but oftentimes when I play the guitar, because of the position that you're holding the instrument, it creates a lot of stress in my body and can cause headaches and whatnot. So I kind of stopped playing guitar for a little while, and I realized that, hey, I had this old ukulele in the back of the closet, and I pulled it out, and it turned out that I was able to, my body tolerated playing the ukulele because it's so much smaller. And that was one of the things. I also started when I got back, to playing the ukulele a little bit. I started to take lessons from a different guy. And his name is Robert Norwood. I think his last name's Norwood. He runs a company called About Music that's been an institution in Indianapolis for decades. And one of the things he said when I sat down with him was, you've been playing guitar for a long time, but you skipped over all the basics. You jumped right into playing, some things that you wanted to hear and that you wanted to play, but you skipped over the basics. So let's go back. And what he told me was, and I'm going to geek out a little bit, but there's a thing called a triad. So every chord is made up of 3 primary tones. And when you're playing these chords on the guitar, there's 6 strings. So there's all kinds of redundancies and repeat notes, and a tendency to not really pay any attention to, you learn the shape, but you don't pay attention to which chords are playing what notes, and it is just what it is. But by focusing on the triads, you have to really think about which string is which note and what are you playing here. And once you realize that, then it's easy to think about, oh, well, this is a C. And if I move this, well, if I move that a half step, well, that's a C minor. And if I move that a half step, well, that's a, C minor 7. And that was, for me, that was the gateway to begin to look at playing jazz and how jazz players look at the world, and they think about moving moving those triads in different, or modifying those triads in different ways to bring colors and different moods and different emotions to the chords. And so the ukulele, by closing the options down and making just the basic elements available, it really opened up that path for me, for my old guitar oriented brain, to start thinking about playing a different kind of music, about playing the jazzier stuff, which, compared to the blues, there's a lot more variations and a lot more options that are typically employed in most, jazzy numbers. And so that was just a really nice new field of learning for me to go down that path with the ukulele, in a way that I wasn't able to access before with the guitar.
Yeah. You said that it allowed you to understand something about the way a jazz musician is in the world. So I wonder if your relationship to the world changed at all as a result of your moving into jazz more deeply?
Well, I don't know if it was as a result of or in parallel with, but you know, when you play it, when you think about a jazz song, it's got, you know, it's got rules, it's got chord progressions, and it's got, you know, it's got rhythms, and it's got, you know, forms that are being repeated. And then in the middle part, there's a creative, you know, more creative aspect, you know, in the improv or in the solo. And that was one of the things that I always sort of wished that I could do, but I was never able to do it. And I'm still just barely, you know, dipping my toes into the water of that. But when a jazz musician goes in to play a solo, they have to both be thinking about what's happening in the song, but they're free to do whatever they want as long as they remember what the chord changes are that are happening and what the larger context is, so that the rest of the people in the group can stay with you. But there's that element of just casting off, kind of like, that's a rock climbing term, when you're at the beginning of the pitch and you don't really know what's in front of you, and you don't know how hard it's going to be or what, but you summon up your energy and you cast off and you embrace the unknown. And you take the good with the bad, and you try to play with it and make it your own. And sometimes it turns out good and sometimes it doesn't.
So this is making me think about something that Anne, your wife Anne, mentioned to me just very recently. And that is that in your life, you have pivoted like many times to keep with the work that is most meaningful to you. And that you've done that with grace and with intention and with thoughtfulness. So I wonder if you can, speak at all about maybe that parallel between your exploration of music and where it's led to you, and the path that you've pursued there, and also your own like professional and well, even beyond professional, like what you've chosen, how you've chosen to spend your time with, and the shifts that has taken you on.
So yeah, when I was coming through college, I chose to study computer science and and software applications. And I didn't really feel a strong passion for that, but I felt like my big passion was, I knew I wanted to be financially independent, and I was, and I needed to, be able to move out of the house and find my way from there. But I never really, so I was a software engineer, programmer, consultant, project manager in that IT space for almost 20 years. And, I started on the mainframes, and I ended up with, building web-based database applications toward the end of my time in IT. And, but it never, the long hours alone with you and the keyboard solving logical problems was just, it never resonated with me. And I always wanted to do something more, I don't want to say more creative, but more tactile and more real world and less virtual. And so I started, and I started looking for a different way to earn a living. And so I started a small business. I'd always wanted to I always thought that I would run a small business. My grandfather ran an auto repair shop, and he was a real big influence on me. And so I wound up starting a chimney restoration company. And that was an amazing epiphany for me, that I could get out from behind the computer. I could, get out and talk to people, be outside, use my skills and bring about real world solutions to, leaks and mold issues and problems that people were having with their chimneys and their houses. And it was life changing, to after 20 years, to be able to just get out and do something completely different. And it was a little bit of a difficult transition, but it happened pretty quickly. And that was empowering. And I did that for quite a few years, about 15 years. And then, when Ann and I got together, and we started thinking about this body care company, it was clear that she was just a maker, and she could not stop herself from making things. And she was very interested in making body care products and soaps and things like that, as well as many other things. But we just thought, well, we could make a difference in the options that people have for getting rid of plastics and getting rid of the harmful chemicals and getting rid of the rainforest destructing derivatives and ingredients and packages that are some of the only things that are available in most of the commercially available, body care products, shampoos and conditioner bars, especially. And that's where our home base landed, partly because we were able to figure out the technology for creating a new product. Well, it wasn't new, other people were doing it, but we created our own version, our own recipes, or I should say Anne created those, and she did all the formulation. But together we were able to take that and make it into a business, so that we could afford to spend our time working on that, and keeping those conversations going and introducing people to the idea that, hey, we have great options other than what's generally available, for those products that come in the pink bottle or the gray bottle or the blue bottle. Well, there's another option that doesn't come in a bottle at all, and it works really well. So that was how that plays in with the music, I'm not sure, but that was a nice transition for us.
Well, and it makes me think about what my reflection immediately after interviewing Anne was that nothing is done without really deep thought and consideration for the environment, for the world that we live in, for fellow humans and animals and plants that are on this journey with us. So just reminded of that again, and how interesting too that Anne's chemistry background, science, and that kind of exploration, weds with your business the aspects of the computer and I'm sure that those things coming together, you bring really different skills, but skills that are all needed to make a business work.
Yeah, well, she's the driver. She's the creator. She's the visionary. And I've run quite a few businesses and have been self-employed since '99. So I know a lot of the logistics and ins and outs on how to do, how to run a business in this context of this society and economics that we live in. But her ideas and vision for the creativity and the uniqueness of these products is all her own. She's got the gift and the connection to the plants and the mountains and the trees and the forests, and that really speaks to her and informs her and inspires us both that way.
Well, I think as we wrap this up, I wanted to also say that I was introduced to the two of you playing jazz together. And that was such an inspiring and deep, I could feel it sort of deeply in my being. And I felt like it allowed me to get to know both of you on a really different level than the times that we've spoken, which has also been a wonderful way to get to know you both. So can you say just in wrapping this up, just say a little bit about the combined music that you and Anne explore together?
Sure. Yeah. Anne she's a very accomplished pianist. And when we started, and at one point, 4 or 5 years ago, we spent a short time taking jazz lessons together, and we learned so much about how to communicate with each other, because I was on one end of the musical spectrum and she was on more the classical end, and we learned a lingo and a set of a language that we could communicate with each other, and all of a sudden, it took a little time, but we were able to, begin to be able to play things together and collaborate, and that's been a lot of fun. The guitar or the ukulele and the piano don't necessarily go together naturally, because those two instruments are the ukulele is so quiet, and the piano can make so much volume and so much noise, but we're working at how to blend those together.
Wonderful. And for people who are local here in New Hampshire, they may want to just keep their eye open for open mics that you may be performing at in the near future.
You never know.
Well, thank you so much. And we'll take it out with a little bit of music, but I'm going to invite you up into my studio. I think people know from last week that you are my neighbor. And so you're going to work your way up and give us a little bit of a ukulele tune to bring us out today.
All right. That sounds like fun.
Thank you so much, Ed. It's really
Thank you, Ellen. Appreciate you for doing this important work and for inviting me to be part of it. It's been a pleasure.
Great. See you in a moment. So Ed is putting his things away, and he'll be working his way up here. I want to just take this opportunity to ask people who are interested, who enjoy these podcasts, to like the podcast, to subscribe, and to inform friends, to post or repost the podcasts as they come out every Thursday morning at 6 a.m. And then that would go a long way in helping to get the word out. And I think it's just very important to hear the stories of people who are connecting to what's in their heart. And we don't necessarily get that kind of an angle on people's lives. And I think it's really important. So, and Ed is here, so I'm going to move aside. And actually, maybe I can, I think I'm going to move aside and have Ed come in. And you want to stand, right, Ed?
Try to think that love's not around, though it's uncomfortably near. This old heart ain't gaining no ground, because my angel eyes ain't here. Angel eyes that old devil sent, that glow unbearably bright. Need I say that my love's misspent with angel eyes tonight? So drink up, all you people, order anything you see, have fun, you happy people, the drink and the laughs on me. Pardon me, but I've gotta run. The facts uncommonly clear. This old heart ain't gaining no ground, because my angel eyes ain't here. So drink up, all you people, order anything you see, happy people could drink and laugh on me. Pardon me, but I've gotta run. The facts uncommonly clear. I gotta find who's now number one, and why my angel eyes ain't here. Why my angel eyes ain't here. Excuse me while I disappear.
Ed LaPlante.